I'm sorry, I've been on this computer and I forgot. I only saw now that it's almost time.
Good. All right. Well,
Thanks.
welcome everybody. Welcome. This morning, I think we're gonna pick up on Master's story from yesterday, and yeah, the very interesting insights that he gave us. So Lee, I don't know if you'd like to pick up there first and get us going.
Yes, thank you. So I've already thanked Master, but just once again, just to say what a great opportunity for us to listen to. And I think what I wrote in the email is these are South African stories, and it's important for us to connect from different backgrounds, from different perspectives, and we all learning and growing and appreciating, so that's one of the rich opportunities that we're having in this forum, is to be able to listen to each other's stories and simply gain great insights and understanding as a result. I think for me personally, one of the things that struck me from Master's story was his talking about his name and his absolute ownership of his name, and how and I think just the importance of names and the importance of words and the weight that we perhaps underestimate how valuable and how weighty words are. I always find it interesting with my husband Christopher being a minister, that he does weddings, and at the moment that he says, "And I now pronounce you husband and wife," those words now create this married couple. And it's, so to me, just recognizing that words are really important. And then also just the thinking about Master and his name, and mastering our lives and mastering our destiny. And that the challenge to me is, what am I mastering? How am I continuing to do that? So thank you so much, Master. Really appreciate what you shared with us yesterday.
Great, thanks, Lee. Yeah, right. I'd like to get thoughts from some of the other folk as well, and on what we heard. I know I think Caroline wasn't with us yesterday, but she can pick up from the conversation as it goes and see how her thoughts go on that one. And I'm not sure if Donovan was with us, but Ed, let's start with you.
Yeah, thank you, Master, very much for sharing that. As you were telling your story, I was thinking how different it would have been had you grown up in the UK. And that also made me think that your story would have been different had you been a white South African. Yet here we all are, sharing our experiences, learning from each other. And I think that's a wonderful thing, that we've all come on different journeys, but we're in the same place. We're all helping each other. We're all learning from each other. And I just found that, really, well, quite wonderful, actually. I loved your thing about who and what. That, what we are, we can change. Who we are, we can't. But I do think some whats are much more powerful than others. And I don't think you were there when I told my story. But when you got to the bit about your marriage breakup, it was very similar to mine. And I felt very much for you at that moment, because I think that what you're still coming to terms with, just like I'm coming to terms with my marriage breakup. So I kind of really felt for you then. And then, yeah, your name and the power of words. And I thought, well, actually, when I was an accountant, I insisted on being called Edward. I would never be called anything else but Edward. But now I'm much more relaxed about my name, and I don't mind being called Ed now. So that was really interesting. But yeah, that thing about the power of words and the power of names, I was actually doing a little bit of preparation for the talk that Trevor's asked me to do, and I came across key man insurance. And the context I was using it in was for a woman. And this was about 20 years ago, but we still call it today, in these enlightened times, key man insurance. And I think their words around gender have a massive impact. So and then you talked about perception as well, how we're perceived. And that was really interesting as well. So I was just fascinated by your journey, and I'd love to know more about the politics. So thank you very much for sharing what was a very personal story.
Great, thank you, Edward. Better start calling you Edward again. I think I called you Edward in the beginning, and then we sort of went to Ed after a while. But so thanks for that, Ed. So Stella, let's get across to you next.
Morning, everyone. Yeah, so Master, thank you so much for sharing your story yesterday. I got to know you a little bit better via your story, but I'm sure that was just the tip of the iceberg. Half an hour is so little to talk about one's life, especially if you've been through a lot like you have. There was also a couple of things that stood out for me. And I loved it when you talked about writing an essay on your journey on a train, but you've never been on a train. And I was just thinking there, what imagination you must have had to be able to write an essay on that, especially for like me, that's not a very creative person. I would one day love to hear what you actually wrote in that essay. And then I could really relate to what you were saying about perceptions about people that are divorced. And I'm so, what is the word? I'm so humbled and actually ashamed to say that I was also one of those people that thought that a divorce, especially a divorced woman, was such an ugly word to me. And I never thought in my wildest dreams that one day I would also be classified as a divorced woman. And that just realized, I realized later on, you know what, you can never have perceptions or judgments on people on their status, whether it's marital status, whatever. Yeah, so that brought a few memories back for me. And then also on the power of names. That is such an interesting topic. And Lee, I would like, if we could maybe one day talk about it. And for me, it brought also back, my name means star. And in my previous work experience, sometimes people would say to me, thank you, you were a star doing that. And I've heard it so often, and then I want to say, oh, but that's my name. But I prefer not to do that. But yeah, I think there's a lot that can be said about one's name. But thank you for sharing your story. It was so lovely. And I'm looking forward to meeting you over a cup of coffee in the real world and get to know more about you. Thanks.
Thank you, Stella. And those were some stellar comments. So yeah, we'll...
Yeah, sword and better coffee.
Yeah, and Master, if any point you want to pick up on a comment or a question that people are making while we're going through this, please just unmute and add your thoughts in. So don't feel you have to sit and wait for me to pick something up if you feel there's something pertinent that you'd like to add. So please do that. Right, Trevor, let's get across to you next.
Right, good morning, and thank you, Master, for that. I just want to tell you, if you haven't been on all the 100 and how many episodes here, as unique as your story was to you, and I thoroughly appreciated how vulnerable you were in telling the story. I can understand why it took you a bit of time to get up to speed and get the courage going to actually share with strangers here. I just, the appreciation that I have again, time after time after time, in all the stories that come across here from the different people, the thought that went through my head as you were talking is, man, look at this guy. He looks the picture of, just for me, dynamism, in total control of his life. You look at him on the screen and you say, this man is a man's man. And then you tear aside all the little leaves and you find that he's just as vulnerable as everyone else that has ever been on this platform. I mean, uniqueness, but the depth of the stories, and knowing that everyone we're going to meet is going to have a story like this. I just find it absolutely fascinating. But the focus was your vulnerability. So you can see how words mean nothing to me, because if they go more than 3 letters, I actually can't spell them. Vulnerable. How vulnerable you were is exactly what comes across from everyone else out there. And that I was humbled, exactly as Stella was, but more humbled to know that every single individual we pass, no matter who they are, what size car they drive, what bicycle they push, everyone has a similar story.
Great, thanks, Trevor. All right, Cecile, let's get across to you next.
Hello. Yes, I listened to 90% of it, then the phone rang, and then I listened to the rest of it last night. It is so interesting to listen to the story and about the names, because yes, names are also important to me. I always ask people, especially if they have names that are out of the ordinary, what does your name mean? And it fascinates me that there are people that don't know what their names mean. So then I always say to them, go back to your parents if they're alive, and ask them, why did they call you that name? Because there's a reason why we call our children specific names, number one. And number two, we always used to, my twin sister and I always used to joke, well, she always used to joke with me, because my name means blind, Cecile means blind, and her name means heavenly. So you can imagine, as the 10 minutes older sister, she's always telling me, "Ach, you're blind and I'm heavenly." And then we also used to tease our brothers, because you ask, and just on Sunday, my granddaughter of 6 told me, "Oma, do you know that if I was a son, if I was a boy, my name would have been this, that, and the other. And if my brother was a girl, his name would have been something else." But the fascinating thing is that their names were not interchangeable. It was Chanel's name, Bastian, and Bastian's name wouldn't have been Chanel. There were other names at that time. Back to Master. Master was fascinating as well, was the and trade union, or whatever you call it, background. It was interesting to hear that politics, and there's jostling for positions, and there's someone that wants to help you and people that don't want to help you. And oh yeah, it was fascinating. And just what Trevor said a minute ago, when you look at Master, to me he looks like this calm, serene guy. And yeah, so it is so nice to see that, yeah, he's got passionate things that he's passionate about and like fiery about. There are others just accepts and quietly says, okay, I will change those, or the other things he just accepts and he doesn't do anything about it. Lovely. I think we met once in a big room. But when I was new to Four Ways Chamber. But yeah, it'll be nice to meet you face to face.
Great, thanks, Cecile. Right, let's get across to another man with a name. Sometimes you call him Jasper, sometimes you call him Jasper, sometimes you call him Casper, but I'm not too sure what it all means. But so across to you.
Morning. Yeah, no, when I was younger, I think similar like Donovan, I didn't like my name because of all the variables of Jasper, Casper, Rasper, whatever. But I must say there's definitely power in a name because as I grew up and I started to understand things more, and especially in the Bible, and it talks of the stone, Jasper, and how it's used in the foundation. And I start looking at my life and how I'm probably mostly busy with laying foundations, not necessarily building the building. So there is definitely power in it if you start owning it. But with that comes the whole thing of the power of words, what we say to each other, what we agree upon. And I think what came up again with me with Master sharing yesterday was this, obviously the name and the power of word. But I was also impressed how he almost reinvented himself from his circumstances forcing him into this very political activist, see all the bad things in the world, and his own acknowledgement that it wasn't solving anything, but it was designed to disrupt whatever was put on the table, not to help make it happen, but just to disrupt it. And yet, here we see a master today, like Trevor described. When we look at the guy, we admire the guy. We think, wow, this guy exemplifies wisdom. But it comes from pain. It comes from this, looking at what you used to believe and saying, wow, I've been duped. And I remember for me, it was such a shock to my Afrikaner system when all this stuff came out in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And I realized we lived a sheltered life, but I didn't know those sort of things went on. But, now it's a shock. It's now indelibly part of your history. So I think all of us during our life have to reassess the so-called old truths that we think were truths and to say, is it really true? And then as you reassess it, it can then change the whole course of your life, like it did for me as I started to be exposed to people like the International Christian Chamber of Commerce and other people. And then I'm thinking of, life throws you some curveballs. And at one stage there was a saying, the bend in the road is not the end of the road, except if you don't take the turn. And over the weekend, someone made a saying to say, from a point of view from people who are himself in a lot of debt right now, and he's a debt counselor, and his advice to them is to say, listen, in the big scheme of things, this is just a blip in the road. So let's look at the future. Where are you heading with your life? And then let's start dealing with this issue, this problem of debt in front of you from that issue. So I think all of us, time gives us perspective, both looking backwards and looking forward. But and another thing that I think I will always associate with Master is the word narrative, and how he explained how it actually sunk not just the person's career like Thabo Mbeki, but it put the whole country on a different track just because a bunch of people that controlled the opinion of the day put a narrative out there that eventually became the truth. So I think all of us are co-responsible to question the so-called prevailing narrative to see if it's really true or not. But I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Jasper. And right, let's get across to a man who's had a few twists and turns in the road of his life as well. So Mpumelelo, so what are your thoughts?
Yeah, sorry, I've put the video off. It seems like my connectivity today is atrocious. I don't know if I was affected by weather, but anyway, yeah, I think I concur with everyone. The power of names, and I know that I have a tendency to introduce myself and say my name is the best name a mother can give to a child. I think it's because I've always just felt that names are powerful. I mean, even when I'm not succeeding, but because I keep hearing my name being called, it's as if I have to rise to that, you know. So it's just the power in a name, and I agree with that, Master. The second thing for me was that my heart truly bled when it came to your story about divorce. And the question that I would have is I'm wondering how your children are, if they are also able to navigate they were able to navigate this difficult time, and how they are at the moment, and just pray strength to you and them, because coming out from broken family, I know how difficult that can be. The third one was about politics. You know, yeah, I've always had a suspicion, having looked at various clips, that the narration that was created around Thabo Mbeki was not true. But also what you said about BEE. So the question I'd have to you is, given that people get caught between the dirtiness of politics and the corruption of politics, plus the power of corporate, how do you think we can create ecosystems that will enable people to explore their talents and grow? Because government is not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And corporate as well has its ways and standards that it does things, which may make it difficult for some people to access both. And they find themselves wedged in between. How do we create ecosystems that can assist?
Right, thanks, Mpulelo. Yeah, some interesting questions there, and probably topics for a whole nother discussion. But I don't know if you want to pick up on any of those points, Master, before I move on to someone else.
Yeah, maybe just straight away with politics and how do we create an ecosystem? We don't have to create an ecosystem, Pumelelo. We've got an ecosystem. We have started it. This is the foundation. Wisdoms is one amongst those ecosystems that we can create. But also the second thing, I mean, around corruption and BE and stuff like that. One of the things that I'm doing or I'm busy with is something around farming. And my story is, if one could at least raise the initial funding and bring on board everybody else into the broader vision of something small that you started. So you start building and bringing people from all races, you know, who will add the desired value. I was saying this morning to Jasper, I said my heart goes to a typical Afrikaner male in South Africa who thinks that he has got nowhere to go, but he has got this skill. Either he's a seasoned accountant, or he has been a seasoned accountant and he has been retrenched. How do we harness that wealth of knowledge into a particular system? Why wouldn't I bring that kind of a person into my business to do accounting? You know, one of my friends, as I part on this question, was teasing me the other day. He said, you know, I can't understand this guy. His spiritual mentor is an Afrikaner, as pastor, and then his accountant is an Afrikaner. What? Then that. What's wrong with you, Master? I said to them, you know what? It's where God put me, and that's the path that I'm walking, and I'm enjoying it. I'm not a better black, but yeah.
Thanks, Master. Yeah, I wish a lot more people had that kind of attitude to life in general. That's great. Right, Steve, let's get across to you next.
Thanks, Ivan. So you've caught me typing in the chat box. Thanks. Mr. Mahlobogoane, thank you very much. I really enjoyed your, I watched the video late last night and caught up on your...
That was the best attempt on my surname ever I've ever had.
Thank you. Well, I was going to say to you, I wanted to greet you as boss this morning because I so enjoyed your sign-off at the end of that. And that was one of the things that that really resonated with me, was listening to you tell your story in the context of the story of our country. That was just, I enjoy being able to hear individual experiences given our collective as a country and where we've come from. Even though some of those are hard to hear, some of those are difficult, there are, you know, sort of joys and celebrations and traumas all mixed in together. And so thank you so much for just opening a window into your world and your experience. I echo a lot of what Trevor said, I think quite a bit more eloquently in terms of your vulnerability, and it's quite humbling to listen to somebody share at that level. So thank you. Specifically, I think your commentary around just some of the racial elements of our past and our present and how that has affected you and how you've navigated through those things. So thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Donovan, right across to you.
Morning, everyone. Yeah, just on a lighter note first, when I worked at a certain company many years ago, when I started, I took over somebody's desk and his laptop and his projects. And I asked, you know, people who was here before me, and they said his name was No More. So, yeah, I started, you know, taking off from someone called No More. He was no more there. Just coming back to the meaning of my name. When I first discovered the meaning of my name, I was not so happy with it. Until one day when I went to one of our cell group meetings of church, and then we had a discussion about, you know, our names and the meanings of it. And I shared it, and I was actually reluctant to share it. And I told, you know, the members that, you know, I didn't feel too happy about my name. And they actually convinced me that it has a different meaning than what I saw, you know, from the surface. So my name means dark warrior. So, you know, I didn't like especially the dark part about it. So they explained to me I can actually use it for good. So I can see it as someone fighting bad, someone fighting, you know, dark things, bad things, etc. So whenever I'm in a situation, I just remind myself of the meaning of my name, and I use that as a, you know, as a strength and not as a weakness. So I'm fighting, you know, the bad, the evil, the negative around me, and that's who I am. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Donovan. Yeah, it definitely sounds like a title for a superhero series, The Dark Warrior. Yeah, take on the world. Good for that. Right, Caroline, let's get over to you.
Hello? Oh, yeah, sorry, I've just got to get used to this mute. Yes, thank you, Master. I did actually watch I'm sorry that I wasn't able to be here yesterday, but I watched the video last night. And I really enjoyed it. And thank you for sharing your story. I really do appreciate, I think it's very important for us to hear other South African stories. And particularly as white South Africans, it's good to hear about somebody coming from a completely different background, somebody who had to walk to school in a rural area. I mean, that's totally foreign to just about any white South African. We never had to do that. So it's good for us. We need to cross these barriers. We need to find out about each other, and I really appreciate that. And then, yeah, I found a lot of points about the story have already been said, and I echo them. But I enjoyed the politics. I am interested in politics, and I follow it quite a bit. So it was interesting to hear from somebody who's, you know, been in the trenches as such. And interesting to hear how, you know, how you changed your mind, became a bit disillusioned and decided to get out. And good for you that you did, that you were able to grow in that way and say, this is not right and I'm going to do something else. And also the agriculture, I certainly hope that you are able to transfer skills into that space, because I think it's really important. And yeah, great that you have that passion, and yeah, I wish you every success in that. And everybody's already touched on the power of the name, and that it was very interesting how you earn your name and how you were able totally to be proud of it and push back against those who were teasing you or, you know, telling you that you should reject it. But instead you said, no, that's my name, and you're happy with it, and that's great. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Caroline. Ooh, excuse me, tickle in my throat. So Master, I'll just hand over to you, maybe just to any final thoughts and comments before I give it back to Lee to wrap up.
Yeah. Thanks for the feedback. Yesterday, I used one word. I was communicating with Lee, and I said, I'm anxious to hear what the feedback will be. And you just have to relax. You don't have to be anxious. Then I said, no, maybe there is a better word to define my anxiety. And then I changed the word and said, I'm looking forward in anticipation, a lot of anticipation to see what will happen. And I must say, I like the feedback, and I was taking some notes, and I will also listen going forward. This morning, Jasper said to me, you actually need to write a book about this thing. And I thought it will be something very valuable to read, but also some little testimony about what I said earlier about a white male and stuff like that. White male Afrikaner. My life, my corporate life was influenced by what you would call, I'm not sure if it's the word verkramte or something like that kind of attitude. It was that kind of a person who just got interested in me and started mentoring me for some reasons, and he just liked me, this guy. He was an extremist, but he liked me, and I appreciated that. And hence my love and started developing to say, it is not about the race. For me, race is like sin. Sin knows no color. Sin knows no, knows no race or something like that. But so yeah, those are some of the things that are fascinating. And Steve, I think you remember that I told you that my other name is Steve. So I'm not sure that all the stones that are thrown to me, stones that are thrown to me is because of the name Steve. But I'll still think I'll stick to my faith and go on like that. Now I think what stands out for me within wisdoms is the wisdom that we pick from one another. And I haven't seen a platform, I've never expressed myself as vulnerable as I did on this particular platform. And then the second and the third day when I looked at Trevor, I was asking myself, if I have to prepare myself, what would be his reception of my story and stuff like that? Because we always have, unwarranted, unscientific perceptions about people, but people just express who they are, and that is such a great learning. And then from there, I started enjoying and getting more relaxed day by day, listening to everybody else, and then I listened to Edward or Ed story, and Pumelelo also. But also one of the things that we need to pride ourselves with, not in a too prideful way within the wisdom platform, is that you've got a Mpumelelo who grew up in a township, who had his own township experience. I grew up in the rural areas. Most of my life come from that particular angle. And we have two different experiences, and both of us are black. And our encounter, and that is what motivated me to say, at long last, on Monday, I'm going to do it. To say, both of us and everybody else has got a story to tell. And we need to tell true stories, because politics are not about true stories. And they continue to put a narration or a narrative that will keep their stomach full. And we mustn't fool ourselves and think that they've got their us in their good hearts. They need to keep their stomach full. I mean, how do you make? How do you give one person a contract of 113 million on sanitizers, right? How do you justify getting 1.6 million from just from VBS and buy a Land Rover or Range Rover cash, when in my case as a Burki, if I take that and go and buy myself a 6410 John Deere tractor, I will employ about 6 people. But at every morning or every time you are in parliament and saying you are speaking for the poor, while you are ripping the economy off. I mean, 1.6 million. I need that now. If I can get 1.6 million, that 2,012 hectares of land, I'll make wonders out of that, because there are also farmers around me whom I can help. Because the biggest thing in agriculture is mechanization, the biggest challenge. But all in all is agriculture or farming has got some family values that runs through families. So if we are to look at that particular sector, it can also create the same ecosystem that Mpumelelo spoke about. So yeah, I really thank you everybody for your comments. And I just want to look at one point that I made here. Yeah, I think our like I said, our pains should not define us. It must be about what we learn out of that pain. As I close or as I conclude, I just have a little testimony to share. A friend of mine who works at Ford, he sold me a Ford in 2016, Zulu and Afrikaans. So yesterday he sends me a message, a WhatsApp message. I'll share with you, Lee, because I do have your number, a screenshot. He says to me, Master, I need about 140,000 because ABSA did not give me 100% bond, right? And I said to him, yo, you are lucky or you are blessed, because I'm actually in prayer for these 3 days. I'm also looking for some breakthrough. And then I said to him, I'll look out for you who can borrow you that money. Then 2 minutes later, I said, no, man, let me write this man another message. I said to this guy, you know what, let's go and pray. Let me pray while I'm praying for 100% bond, that you get 100% bond. This morning, 6:05, I get a message from him that says, ABSA in capital letters has given me 100% bond. Now, I'm talking of an Afrikaner male and who has seen the power of God through me. So raise for me is a non-issue.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Master. Amazing way to end off the session. So Lee, on that note, what are our thoughts for tomorrow?
Well, Stella asked, Cecile asked, and I think we've started on the subject of the power of names. And as Trevor mentioned, the same thing. And I wonder whether tomorrow we could just spend some time just sharing what is the meaning of our name. And also, have we been given a name or called a name that has stuck with us negatively or positively, and that we've had to deal with that in some way? And so I just give a simple story. My dear friends of mine have 2 autistic boys, and they have a number of sort of values, and one of the values that they have in their family that they stick to very strictly is that no one can call anybody stupid, and that and it's just, again, just a recognition of the power of a name and the power of a label. And so let's talk about that tomorrow. What is the meaning of your name? And have you ever been labeled or named something that you has either been positive or negative? And what have you done with that? So look forward to hearing that conversation tomorrow. And again, Master, thank you so much.
Great. Thanks so much, Lee. So everybody get prepared. Come call each other names tomorrow. And have a fantastic day further, and we'll see you in the morning. Go well.